Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm setting up the YouTube live right now. Can you see me right now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So I'm on mute on my YouTube.
Okay.
That's good. I'm going to edit the video by Hi, if anybody is tuning in right now, we are just getting ready and setting up the YouTube live, which is going to be at 7 o'clock. So please, you can either tune out or just ignore us until 7 o'clock arrives.
Perfect.
And I'm just putting in the description so that everybody knows what they're watching. I'm not allowed to put links in there, so I have to unlink this. There we go. And title, which I have right here. Too bad I can't set this up beforehand. I can, but it tells me weird stuff. Like when I'm going to change it from, I can set it up in private visibility and then switch it to public. But when I switch it to public, it doesn't activate. So
Oh,
I sort of have to do it this way.
yeah.
It's public. The video link is here. I have a video link and I'm going to put a thumbnail up. Which should be good right here.
Nice.
Yeah. Did you want the video link or it's okay at this point?
Let me see if anybody has written to say if they're having any struggles. Um, yeah, I mean, if you want to, you could DM it to me or send it through to me in the chat and I'll send it out. But either way, I think it's probably all right.
Okay. Copying the video link and I'm going back to Zoom and I will send you in the chat the link.
Perfect. Thank
There
you.
you go.
That's awesome. Is that the same one that I
So we are almost
back earlier? It might be.
This is no, that was the channel link. This is going straight to the video. Since we set up the video,
Gotcha.
now the link is created
Okay.
for the video. There wasn't a link created for the video until the live is set up.
Gotcha.
So now that we
Okay.
set up the live, there's the link.
Nice.
And I believe in a few minutes, we'll just wait around. Where are you from? Where do you live?
I live in southeastern Indiana, very close to Cincinnati, Ohio.
Actually, duck. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I
Yeah.
see you now. My connection is wobbly, so we'll have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Hmm.
Nice. But
Yeah.
you're doing
And
some
that's where
traveling.
where did did you grow up there?
Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Bear Branch, Indiana. Little small town,
Okay.
probably about an hour and a half or so, maybe an hour from Cincinnati. Cool little farm,
Okay.
rural upbringing.
Really? Did you have
Yeah.
animals?
Yeah, we did. We had obviously cats and dogs. We had a couple of horses. We had a bunch of cows, chickens. My dad tried to raise pigs, but that was a fiasco, so we didn't try that again.
I hear they're really intelligent.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Okay.
Yeah, these little piglets didn't make
Okay, I
it.
think we're going to get started now.
Okay, sure.
Oh, your pigs didn't make it? They
No,
died?
yeah, they died. That's why we didn't try to raise pigs again. It was a wild animal that got at after them, and
Oh,
so yeah,
oh,
yeah. So it was kind of sad, but
that's sad.
it's all part of learning, living on a farm, and you experience that. So
Okay, well, I think maybe we'll get started now. So, I'm welcome to Beyond Survival Triumphantly You. And today we are joined by a remarkable woman whose journey through breast cancer has become a beacon of light for others navigating life after her diagnosis. Rachel was diagnosed with breast cancer on December 2nd, 2021. And what followed was more than just treatment. It was a deep personal transformation. She committed herself not only to healing physically, but also to reclaiming her peace of mind, her presence, and ultimately her joy. Now, Rachel is using her experience to guide other women through one of the most overlooked chapters of survivorship, the after. She supports those who feel like life has fallen apart, who are afraid to embrace happiness again, and who are struggling to feel at home in their own skin. And I know what that feels like. Through workshops, coaching, and community, Rachel helps women pick up the pieces and find new empowered normal. Her mission is both personal and powerful, and I'm honored to share this space with her today. Rachel, welcome to the show.
thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, Gwen.
Thanks for being here. I'm really happy to be able to talk to you and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been following you for a little while. I think we probably virtually met on a group that we were both part of. And you were very both, very visible there. What do you know what group that was?
It could be the breast cancer support I got this group.
I bet it is.
Yeah,
That helped me a lot.
yeah.
I hope we don't have this problem with my internet or whatever, because I'm getting a real delay, but we'll see how it goes. I might have to knock it off and come back on again. Okay, so Rachel, you describe your cancer journey as a time of learning to live in the present and not let fear take over. That's a hard thing to do. What helped you most in that shift? And was there a specific moment when you realized you were no longer guided by fear?
Yeah, I would say that. So part of it had to do with just having a child and, a child in high school and a child in college. And so for a long time, I was gripped with worry and fear of what might happen and all of that kind of thing. So as she got older, I started to realize there's no reason to worry unless there's a reason to worry. And so obviously a cancer diagnosis is a reason to worry, but I chose to not worry from, the time that I was, you're given an appointment date. You just choose not to worry between now and that appointment date. You're given an appointment for an MRI or for some other kind of surgery or some kind of treatment, and you just learn a way of choosing not to worry between now and that date and just living in the present.
So you're saying that it was a choice that you made. You were choosing not to worry.
Yeah, I
You
think it's
saw that as a possibility.
Yeah, I think it's a choice because it's a choice that I made prior to my diagnosis. Of course, when I was given this diagnosis, I definitely, felt it. I was upset. I was floored. I thought my life was going to come to an end because I had seen both of my parents die from cancer. So you don't automatically get that diagnosis and think you have a future. So at that point I was definitely floored.
Wow.
But then as time went on, I was able to just kind of reconnect with my former self from prior to my diagnosis and just kind of learn to be present with the people around me, as best I could. Of course, the subject would still come up. I would be talking about it, but then I would drop the subject and allow other thoughts to come in and fill my brain instead of thoughts of worry. So I didn't allow myself to focus on the worry that I could have done.
It was a real mindfulness, it sounds like.
Yes.
Um, so a lot of people, when they get diagnosed, they think that treatment is the absolute worst. The thought of chemo, being sick. Like I know for me, I thought I was going to be sick all the time. You see in movies, women with the headdresses or bald heads or head scarves, and they're always sick and dragging themselves out of bed and vomiting, and it's horrible. And I actually thought the treatment was going to be the hardest part. Um, but you feel that the end of treatment, when treatment ends, is the when the toughest part begins. What does picking up the pieces look like for you personally? What did it look like for you personally?
So just to kind of touch on what you said there, I think going through the treatment for many is very difficult, but I feel like at the end of treatment, people are just kind of left hanging. And so I think that's a very difficult time for a lot of people. And so for me, what that looked like, picking up the pieces, was to have a good plan in place. The stage that I was given was 3A, so it wasn't, 0, 1, or 2. I knew that it was kind of high. It wasn't 4, thankfully, but I did know that this was not something to mess around with, and I didn't want to only utilize Western medicine. I wanted to have some other tools in my toolkit. And so picking up the pieces for me was a matter of developing a plan with an integrative doctor and with, initially I had a functional medicine doctor, and then I even hired a functional health coach. So I was working with these different people and trying to kind of figure out what could I do in addition to what I had already done through Western medicine that can help to, um, pad my ability to recover or, follow up and all of that other stuff. So what that really looked like was having Signatera testing, which I imagine you've heard of, but for the listeners, it's a way of checking for circulating tumor cells and circulating tumor DNA. So I did that. And then also MRI as a follow-up. I had breast density of level D. So A is the clearest breast, B is slightly dense, C is more dense, and D is the most dense. So the tumor that I had was not picked up on the mammogram. So what I wound up doing was talking with my surgeon about using thermography and MRI and ultrasound for my follow-up care instead of mammogram, just because a 3 centimeter tumor didn't show up on that mammogram. So I thought it was important for me to be proactive and not cause unnecessary injury, to my breasts if it wasn't going to show anything anyway. So that's kind of part of the plan that I had. And then the additional parts were really looking at my diet. What did I want to change and fix about my diet? What about exercise? How could I incorporate more exercising? I was using a mini trampoline on a regular basis for a long time, trying to help circulate my lymph. Getting lymphatic drainage massage, going in for acupuncture. So I was doing all of these different things and working on my mind. I realized that, not only did I want to have a heart of gratitude and, appreciation for where I am and how I got here and all of this kind of stuff, but also to focus on forgiving other people. And then I also include in that forgiving myself. We can be really hard on ourselves for just even being diagnosed in the first place. Some people kind of emotionally beat themselves up, if only I had done this or if only I had done that. and that's not the time or place to do that. We really need to be growing our empathy and our self-care and our self-compassion in order to be able to move forward from a diagnosis like that.
How did you find these tools that you speak of, like mindset, diet, exercise? How did you know, with everything that's available, how did you know what to focus on?
I think a lot of times what that has to do with is following our intuition, which isn't always clear. It's not always easy to see what our intuition is telling us. My sister Penny says that anxiety yells and inner wisdom whispers. So we're not always able to
Ooh,
tune
I
in.
like that.
Yeah. So our inner wisdom is just whispering to us. We can't hear it over the loudness of our anxiety. But I think once we develop the tools of meditation and being more mindful, I actually lead meditation for some former employees or former coworkers where I used to work and for other people too. So I lead a little bit of meditation and I teach people as much as I can about mindfulness and then also just having these tools. I guess some of the tools actually came from my sister because she's a therapist. So those were things that I learned, like tapping, EFT tapping, and stuff like that. So all of these different tools can help us to center ourselves, ground ourselves, bring ourselves back into the present. Plus, the other thing that's really good is utilizing your five senses. And, a long time ago, somebody suggested when I got my life coach training, just to use something simple like you know, a little globe with sand in it or whatever. And as that sand settles, as the snow settles, allow your brain to settle, allow the worry to dissipate. So you don't have to force it. You just watch that settle. It's kind of like a signal. So just doing stuff like that, and having something that smells nice that you can have around to bring yourself into the present moment, to recenter yourself. So all those tools I think are and that's just some of the tools. There's really so many tools that we can use to help recenter ourselves and bring ourselves into the present moment and have less worry. One of my favorite quotes is worry, and I don't know who said it. I've tried to find, but I don't know who said it. So somebody said, worry is like a rocking chair. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so you work with women who are afraid to allow joy back into their lives. What do you think causes the fear to take hold so deeply, and how do you gently guide them towards healing?
I think a part of what happens is that, they're given their diagnosis. And immediately, I think fear is instilled in them. And some women have the post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from their diagnosis, and then not actually treating that, or getting assistance for that, I think can perpetuate this fear base of living. And, we really don't want to live in that fearful state all the time because our stress, our cortisol levels, everything
Oh,
is heightened.
levels.
Yeah. And so, but another thing, so besides just the PTSD, I think another thing that plays a role in this fear is that a lot of times we aren't looking at root causes. I know the previous interview you did, she mentioned that Vera mentioned that 5% of cancers are um, genetic, passed down through the family. And I learned that from a holistic doctor. She said that a lot of times we'll hear, you and I and other breast cancer survivors will hear that it's anywhere from like 5 to 18% are genetic. But this doctor clarified and said it is really about 5% that's passed down in our genes. The rest of that 6 to 18% is our own DNA kind of getting whopper jawed because I know it's not a technical term, but whopper jawed because of our environment. What is our internal environment like? Are we full of stress and high, hormone stress levels?
Hmm.
Are we eating a healthy diet? Are we exposed to environmental toxins outside of our home? Are we drinking pure water? Or does our water have chemical additives in it? That kind of thing. So it's all of this stuff that can go into why did we get this diagnosis in the first place? So I think a lot
Hmm.
of times women are fearful and they're afraid to allow joy back into their lives because they just don't want to let their guard down. They feel like maybe they haven't done enough to prevent a recurrence, or maybe they're not sure, that they're on the right journey with their doctors. Maybe they're skeptical, they're questioning, and their doctors aren't listening. It's got to do with communicating. Um, so basically, I think that sorry about my lights. It's the hot
Oh,
water.
that's okay.
The
I've
hot
got
water.
issues.
Yes. Your
I've got
internet,
issues.
my lights.
Speaking of PTSD, I mean,
Yeah.
I am not fearful. It's like a visceral reaction whenever I have to go back to my oncologist for a checkup.
Hmm.
And I don't want to go. I feel like I'm like kicking and screaming going there. And then I walk in and I kind of get nauseous just
Hmm.
walking in. It's just suggestions for you
Yeah, I mean,
getting there.
I do actually. So one example that I like to bring up with women going through these kinds of struggles is, and I'm not a therapist, so let me just say that outright. I'm not a therapist, so I don't treat people, but I can offer good suggestions and help them with meditations and stuff like that. So, what I like to suggest to people, especially when they're fearful of doing something, so that fear could be going to the oncologist, that fear could be, going in for their first MRI after their surgery, or going in for radiation treatment or chemo treatment or whatever it is. So, what I like to suggest to people is that they do some sort of meditation where they're at home, they're safe, and in their mind, they're visualizing themselves getting into their car, driving to the oncologist building, sitting in their car for a minute,
Hmm.
breathing,
Hmm.
getting out of the car, walking up to the check-in counter, you know, going in to the waiting room, being called back, sitting in the waiting room. And the thing is you don't do this visualization from start to finish in one setting. You can actually just drive yourself to the oncology appointment and then turn around and drive yourself back home. In your mind, you're just visualizing doing
Hmm.
this. Then later on, you visualize yourself actually going in for the appointment, and then you see it going smoothly. You visualize the appointment going well. You visualize the appointment, the doctor coming in and talking to you, the nurse taking your blood pressure, all this kind of stuff. You just visualize it going well. And then you go to the appointment, so maybe for like a couple of weeks beforehand, kind of start a meditation. Especially, I think it's useful for women who are, going into the MRI machine. They're really uncomfortable, they're claustrophobic, to visualize themselves taking just baby steps to get to the MRI. So they're not even taking their clothes off in their first visualization. They're just even leaving their clothes on, getting into the room where the MRI is, and then turning around and leaving and going back home. And then at some point they visualize getting into the room.
Feeling safe.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So then eventually they visualize themselves getting into the room and then changing into the gown. And then even at that point, possibly going back out, putting their clothes
Hmm.
on and leaving. So it's just really about exposing themselves in their mind that once they do get into the MRI machine, they might have to actually visualize that a bunch of times before their stress response can be lowered. So somebody might have to visualize being actually in the MRI
Gotcha.
machine 10 or 15 times before they actually get to the MRI. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any stress at all. but they can go through these visualizations and tone it down. It's not going to be nearly as big a deal when they get there as it would had they not gone through these visualizations.
Well, good. I have a tool now I can use
Yeah,
next week, as a matter of fact.
nice. Well, I hope that helps.
So, Rachel, you mentioned
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, you asked me how I
so
gently
you
guide
you
these women.
mentioned go ahead.
You go ahead. Okay. So you asked how I
Well,
would gently guide these.
it's weird because my connection is so poor, so you go.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no worries. You had asked how I would gently guide these women towards healing. And so I do have a program that leads to acceptance and understanding. I think that's a big part of it is we don't accept where we are. Um,
Mhm.
and then what we do is some non-medical exploration to see why they were diagnosed with this in the first place. Again, it's non-medical, but it's a place that they can start. It's little seeds here and there, and they can say, okay, you know what, maybe I need to find an integrative doctor, or maybe I need to find this person, or maybe I need to go do such and such a test or whatever. So it's really just kind of me helping them to explore. And then I think that allows them to become proactive with their recovery. And then it helps them to take steps more towards preventing a diagnosis down the road. So that's kind of what I do. So, anyway, sorry.
Mm,
You can go on to the next question if you want.
that's okay. No, it's good. So you sometimes talk about that some women feel like they're standing at the edge of a cliff after treatment. And so what helps them find solid ground again, do you
Yeah, I
think,
think they're
or
definitely
can help?
yeah. Yeah, I think they're definitely feel like they're left out in the cold by their medical team. They feel like and I don't know exactly if it's because they're diagnosed with like 0, 1, or 2, but I still feel like even those people need to have some sort of a follow-up plan in mind because there's going to be a very real fear. Whether you're diagnosed with stage 0 or 4, there's still going to be some fear there of a recurrence. And so the way I think it starts is some of these doctors, and I just read about this in these groups, and some of my clients and prospects have shared this kind of thing with me. But, the doctor will say, okay, bye. It's the end of active treatment. And the patient is like, so aren't you going to follow up with me? And the doctor's like, well, just let us know if you notice anything. Until you notice something, we don't really need to see you. And it's kind of like, I just don't understand that. So basically, to help them find solid ground again, I do try to kind of go back to why were they diagnosed with this cancer in the first place? And then beyond that, we go through a process to help them combine the person that they were before their diagnosis to the person that they are now because the new person has got layers, additional layers piled on to who they were before. And I think a lot of times they don't even see the person that they were before still inside. They're looking at their external scars or, radiation burns or, neuropathy or whatever's going on with them. Um, so I think to kind of help them to dig through the rubble, more or less, to try to find who they were before and kind of reconnect with who they were before, knowing that there's these additional layers. Um, and then to, basically, I give them, practical tools. And basically, what I want to do is have her learn to trust her body again, that it's
Mm.
not going to, you know, get a diagnosis. Obviously, there's no guarantees in life, but if we can learn to trust our body, it can help us to move forward with more clarity and to live life instead of just hiding and not living. We've been given the all clear, and we're still not living our lives. So I try to help them relearn to kind of connect and live life again. Because basically, in my mind, these women need to, they would want to, or they would hopefully learn to want to become their own best friend, to become their own advocate, because it's just so important. It's like when we think about the analogy of, well, why do you say this stuff to yourself? Would you ever say that to your best friend? So no, we would never
Yeah.
say, yeah, we would never say it to our best friend, but yeah, we say all this horrible stuff to ourselves because we lose our patience with ourselves. We're not perfect, we fall short all the time or whatever. We're only human. But yeah, I think that we're the only person that is with us from the moment we're born till the moment we die. And so to not be our own best friend, to not have our own back, to not be our own support, I think just sells ourselves short. There's a whole lot of life to live, even when it doesn't seem like there is. There's life that is worth living in this very moment. And I want these women to participate.
That's beautiful. Um, Speaking of beautiful, uh, you know, when we are going through cancer treatment and after, our bodies change and we don't even recognize ourselves in the mirror anymore. And how do you help women um learn to love their bodies and themselves again?
Um, So for me, I didn't always like what I saw in the mirror, even before my diagnosis, right? I'd have a pimple when I was younger,
Hmm.
or, I'd wake up and have a bad hair day, or, whatever it was. So I didn't always like what I saw. But after I became a life coach, I started to kind of get more connected in a spiritual sense. And what I learned is that this body that I'm in right now and the body that you're in right now, our body is a vessel. So this body is what carries our soul around. And because we have this body, it means that we can see each other and we can communicate with each other. So if I didn't have this body, I would just be a soul floating around, and I probably most likely wouldn't be able to communicate with you right now. So
Right.
I really try to help them understand that the first thing is just knowing that this body is a vessel, and that when we look at it from that perspective, I feel like we can break it down into the facts. So for me, I had a lumpectomy, but it was the bottom half of my right breast, which looks like a shark just like took out the bottom half of my breast. It's just not there. So for me, I have lines and scar tissue and stuff like that that's, just kind of right there. And, it's not for me to look at it, if I were to have emotion attached, I could say, something like, oh gosh, what an ugly mess, or, this is really horrible, and why did this happen to me? Which is understandable, to say to ourselves. But for me, instead, I just kind of turn it around and look at the facts. Like, hey, my breast has two lines on it, and half of it is missing. I mean, that's the facts of it right there. So I'm leaving the emotional part
Hmm.
out of it because I was given this beautiful vessel to move around in. And this vessel has treated me well for, I was diagnosed at 53. So at that point, it had treated me pretty well for 53 years. And I really, truly took it for granted. And now I think I'm learning to appreciate my body and not take it for granted. And, I value the body that I had before and I'm grateful to it. But now I've got this body that I'm working with. And so I think the hard thing is for women who, especially, have been through this already for a year and, or more, and still have not looked at themselves in the mirror. I think or if they get a glimpse of themselves in the mirror, they, kind of grumble and they feel really badly about themselves and that kind of thing. But I think, and that's when I feel like they really feel estranged from their bodies. But basically, you know, oh yeah, and sometimes also if somebody makes a comment to them, then, like I don't know why people say stuff like this, but some people say something like, what happened to your breast, if they can see that something's different through their shirt. And I have no idea why strangers would say something like that to somebody. But, from my perspective, I think that it's good to use that as a teaching moment, instead of getting angry at the person who said something, which is understandable again, but we could instead turn it around to something like, well, my left breast tried to kill me, or, whatever. And so I had surgery and now it's just missing. And, I'm just out grocery shopping. I didn't feel like getting dressed for the day, I mean, it's just something as simple as that. We don't owe anybody any explanation, but I do think that it's a good teaching moment, if we're willing to be patient enough to kind of give a brief explanation to somebody, and then maybe they won't ask, that question in the future. I think
Mm,
sometimes people can't help what they say. It just pops out, and then,
true.
yeah.
Like when they call you sir when you don't have any hair. That's a
Yes,
great one.
yes, exactly.
Um, so if a newly diagnosed woman is listening right now, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, what's the first thing you would want her to know?
Um, I would want her to know, first of all, to take a deep breath. It's not the end, yes. It's not the end of our existence. Nobody can tell us when that end date is. We don't know when our expiration date is. Um, and I think that, for them to realize and to understand that they don't have all the answers right now, and that's okay. That with each tiny step they take forward each day, they're going to get new information, new details with which to make decisions with. Um, excuse me. If, if they're, so basically, yeah, just, so they would know that there is a community behind them. There are people who support them. They're not alone. And that
Mm.
the only way to get to the other side is through it. That's not the greatest news. It's not something that somebody wants to hear in this moment, if they're newly diagnosed, but you can't go around it. You can't go above it. You can't go below it. You have to go through it.
Mm.
But there's been some real miracles and some real amazing stories with women who have gone through it, how they've come out on the other side, and, what they've learned about themselves and about other people, and the experiences they've had along the way, and the beautiful people who have supported them along the way, and that kind of thing. So,
I've met a lot of wonderful, many um, beautiful women who, like yourself, who are willing to help other women go through this journey. Thank God for you and the other women who are, guiding, holding um, breast cancer uh, women with breast cancer's hand.
yeah.
Um, and I wish I had known you in the very beginning. And that brings me to asking you, where can somebody find you if they want to work with you, or have an ear to listen to, or where can they go?
Yeah. So I am available on Facebook. I do have a public profile. I'm also on Instagram. The way they would find me is Rachel Meckley Hopkins.
With an E.
Yeah, with an E. So RachelMechley, and then Hopkins. And then the other place they can find me is my website, which is rachelhopkinscoaching.com.
Mm.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a well-being and empowerment coach, and I really just am hoping to help women to, you know, find their own power through all of this.
Are you comfortable sharing what your like payment system would be like for somebody who would be considering something like this? Or what do you how do you work your business?
Yeah, I do have a a couple of things. Like I want to make sure that people who maybe don't feel like they can afford coaching, that they can afford something, they can afford something for coaching. So I'm not here to like, charge an arm and a leg or anything like that for people who are interested in coaching and especially for survivors. I mean, I really want to help anybody, but especially survivors because obviously they're near and dear to my heart. I do have a monthly program that I'm starting. It hasn't started officially yet. And I do have a weekend workshop coming up, but I don't have a date for that yet either. So probably in about 6 to 8 weeks, I'll have a weekend workshop. And then they can come check me out there too, for no charge. But then the monthly membership thing would be around
Awesome.
295. Do what?
Awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Good.
so the monthly
Thank you.
membership, oh, you're welcome. And the monthly membership thing is it's a let's see, it's a founding membership. I couldn't remember the word founding, foundational. So if people wanted to sign up for that, it's for breast cancer survivors, and they would pay $295 per month, which is a discount because of everything that they would get. Maybe I can share some of that information with you. Do you have show notes that you could add that to?
Um, my internet connection once again is
Okay.
uh, unstable, so I didn't hear the question.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I was just
I don't necessarily have that information, but if you share it with me, I will share it with the group.
sure, sure. Yeah, I'll get something written up and get it over to you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share? Or are you
Um,
good?
let's see here. Let's see. I would say, my goodness. Okay, so the big thing too is just that, I think so many of us have a fear of recurrence. And I think,
Yeah.
the main thing that I just want to share about that is that we get proactive, about our health, that we can say, okay, yeah, I'm doing radiation, I'm doing treatment, I'm doing surgery, to take care of it. But I really believe that we need to do more than just that in order to prevent a recurrence. I'm sure you've seen the ladies who said they followed Western medicine's rules to a T and they still wind up with a recurrence. And then other people followed Western medicine's rules to a T and never get a recurrence. You just don't know. But I think a large part of it has to do with us being in the right place, in the right mindset, and taking on our own abilities to, make changes in our lives to help us work with our doctors to help prevent that recurrence.
And by doing that for me, I know, exercise and mindfulness and um yoga and physical activity, those all make my life better. I mean, they make me just feel better in the now.
Yeah.
So we don't have we don't we can't see the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can make our lives better now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it might not help women who are scared to death of a recurrence, but at least that helps you to enjoy your life in the moment, which for me is
Okay.
very, very important.
Yes.
I have to, and know that I'm doing the right thing for myself.
Mm.
That makes me feel better.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah.
You're so right. Very
So,
nice.
Rachel, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us. And you seem like such a compassionate person. And I think it would make any woman who's going through this feel so much more comfortable to be able to work with you.
Yeah, thank you, Gwen. I really appreciate that. And thank you for everything you're doing too.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
my pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Take
Bye.
care.
You too.